Shalom uvracha. It's Thursday afternoon, June 18th. I want to wish everyone a wonderful Shabbat. I want to wish all the graduates who are graduating this week from kindergarten, elementary school, high school, college, graduate school, whatever degree level you're getting, I want to wish them a mazel tov. And I want to wish a mazel tov to all the kids who completed the challenging year of Zoom, this last trimester of Zoom school. And I want to wish everyone all the best. We want to, of course, continue to wish a refuah shlema to all those who are ill in the community and beyond. And we want to continue to wish for peace and justice and tranquility in our city, in our state, and in our country and throughout the world. So this week is Parshat Shelah. And Parshat Shelah, of course, contains the bulk of the narrative is the famous story of the scouts, the Miraglim, which we colloquially call them, even though the Torah here in Parshat Shelah never calls them spies, calls them Tarim, those who surveyed the land. They weren't exactly spies. You don't send 12 very well-known leaders of the community as your spies if you want to disavow knowledge of these people. And they go on a mission that Moshe Rabbeinu sends them, a reconnaissance mission to find out what the land is like. Is it easy to conquer? Is it not easy to conquer? What type of land is it? What type of people live there? To get a sense of what is going on as they come closer and closer to their destiny, to the Jewish people's destiny of reaching the promised land. And of course, it's a very tragic story. They go, they experience the land, and they come back, and as the Ramban in great detail describes, they come back with a mixed report. Part of the report tells ultimate truth about the land. Part of the report, they give their assessment, which they were not asked for, their opinion about whether the land and the people are conquerable. And part of their report includes outright falsehoods that there's no way that they could have experienced, and it was an exaggeration. Eretz ochelet yoshveh, it's a land that consumes its inhabitants. They weren't there long enough to have that experience. They didn't see that. And the Midrash, of course, goes in an interesting direction, but in terms of Pshat, the Ramban, in terms of the plain sense of the text, the Ramban says that this is where they crossed the line into falsehoods about the land. And the Torah continues and tells us not only was it a sin of 10 of the 12 spies, even though Joshua and Kalev strongly argued against it, but it was also, in addition, you have the sin of the people. Chapter 13 is all about the sin, the experience of the scouts and their report and their sin. And chapter 14 is all about the sin of the people. Chapter 14 begins with the words, Vatisa kol ha'ida vatitnu et kolam vayivku ha'am balayla hahu. The entirety of the congregation cried that night. And they were the ones who start to question the entire mission for the first time in the Torah. They don't only complain about the food, about the desert, about the water, but they actually say, Vayamru shalachiv nitna rosh v'nashuva mitzrayim. Let us appoint a new head and go back to Egypt. They challenge the entire premise of the mission. They're ready to overturn and overthrow Moshe and the leadership. They want to go back to Egypt. And at this point, God reacts with consternation. God says that not only will the scouts not enter the land for their prevarications, but also the people, this generation, is not ready to enter the land, and they are rejected from entry, and they are rejected from continuing, and they will die in the desert. What's interesting is that right after this lengthy narrative, we have a very short narrative, which is called the Ma'apilim narrative. This narrative comes the day after, on the morrow. The text tells us that the people mourned very much when they heard that they were no longer going to enter the land of Israel. So we have a reaction of the people, mourning. And then we have a reaction of the individuals. Vayashkimu baboker, vayalu al rosh hahar lemor hinenu va'alinu el hamakom asher amar Hashem ki chatanu. They rise the next morning and they go up on the mountain and they say, we are ready to go. We made a mistake. Our cowardice, our reticence, our ambivalence, our concern, our caution was misplaced. We're ready to go and capture the land. In fact, you have echoes here of Akedat Yitzchak. Vayashkimu baboker. They got up early in the morning. Vayalu al rosh hahar. They go up on the top of the mountain. Hinenu. Hineni. We're here. We're ready. For them, it was a critical moment. They wanted to show their devotion to God, to mission, to destiny. And Moshe says to them, Lama ze atem ovrim et pi Hashem v'hi lo titzlach. Al ta'alu ki ein Hashem b'kir bechem. Do not go up, because God is not with you. But they didn't listen. Vayapilu la'alot el rosh har. They continued forcibly to go up, but Moses and the ark remained in the camp. And the text concludes that they were massacred at the hands of the Amalekites and the Canaanites. They destroyed them. Their approach, their decision, their militancy leads to a terrible disaster and debacle. And what's striking is that the Torah juxtaposes these two narratives, these two stories, one after the other. And I think part of the lesson that has tremendous ramifications in the way that we approach the Torah's view about politics, war, public policy, economics, many things that we often look to and discuss in our own life. The Torah is making a profound statement here. The Torah first presents a story of undue caution and undue fear was wrong. The Meraglim, they should have gone. They should have trusted. Moshe was encouraging them. God was ready. The people were ready. They should have taken that leap of faith and taken the risk. And then the next day, God says it's not the right time. But they want to go. There's a group that is militant. There is a group that is hawkish. There's a group that says, no, we have to fight. Even though God says, don't fight. In the first story, God said to fight, and they were not ready or didn't want to fight. And they go against the will of God. And in the second story, they're ready to fight, and they go against the will of God. And what the Bible is conveying here is a profound message that when we talk about politics or war or public policy, the Torah's view is not hawkish, and it's not dovish. It's not pro this or pro that. It all depends on what the will of God is at that moment, at that time, in this reality. And sometimes God commands us to do X, and sometimes God commands us to do Y, and sometimes God is silent. And one of the challenges, sometimes people, especially in our community, sometimes look and try to tease out and somehow argue that the Torah advocates this public policy or the Torah advocates this public policy. Even in the absence of prophecy, or which we don't have prophecy, it's clear that the Torah is advocating not a hawkish or a dovish, a conservative or a liberal point of view. It's proposing a Torah point of view, a will of God point of view. And therefore sometimes, like in the book of Isaiah, Isaiah challenges the kings to take a neutral stand and not get involved in the geopolitical battles. And other prophets in other situations tell the king to make an alliance and do get involved and go to battle. And in the absence of prophecy, one has to be extremely cautious and careful, except in very broad terms, to say that the Torah advocates this or God advocates that, when the Torah's perspective is multifaceted, complex, contextually bound, And we have to have the humility and recognition that everybody is entitled to have their political view and point of view, but don't necessarily hitch that and cloud it in the context of this is the Torah's view or this is the view of Judaism. And we have to be very careful with that kind of language and those kind of attributions. I still remember to this day, this is one of the major lessons I learned from my teacher, Rav Yehuda Amital, whose 10th Yortzeit is coming up soon during the month of July. One of the things that most bothered him during the early 80s and during the mid 80s is how much, unfortunately, the religious community, the Dati Leumi, the religious Zionist community in Israel, had blurred the distinction between Judaism and politics to the point where if you wore a kippah, you were identified, oh, you must vote for this, or you must believe that, rather than recognizing that a person is entitled to hold a dovish point of view, a person is entitled to hold a hawkish point of view on land for peace, on peace treaties, on this, on that. But don't cloud it and don't clothe everything in the mantle of Torah by quoting a pasuk here or a Maimer Chazal there, etc. We can argue vociferously with civility our points of view, but recognize that to cloud it and clothe it in the Torah's mantle is sometimes taking God's name in vain. And that we have to recognize the Torah has a Torah point of view. Sometimes it's hawkish, sometimes it's dovish, sometimes it's more conservative, sometimes it's more liberal. It has a very unique economic policy, and it depends on the context, and it depends on the situation, and it depends on whether we're talking about primary levels of halacha, tertiary levels, etc., etc. But to have the humility to recognize that and not simply identify it. If you believe X, if you are a Torah observant Jew, that you must believe this or you must believe that. It's much more complex, it's much more multifaceted, and it's much more complicated. And that nuance has to remain with us and in the way that we speak and the kinds of messages we communicate as a community and the way that we think about issues and the way that we approach these complex public policy conundrums. I want to wish everybody Shabbat Shalom. I want to wish everybody have a wonderful time. Everyone, again, if anyone needs to reach out to me, please contact me via email or via the phone. And since we spoke about public policy a little bit today, I just want to urge everyone to do two things. First of all, make sure that if you are registered to vote, please make sure to vote in the primary. Send back your ballot. Voting is a privilege, and voting is a responsibility as a citizen. And number two, please fill out the census form so that our areas, our city, our county, our state receives the proper resources to deal with the challenges. And the only way that we can know that is if we have an accurate count of the citizenry and of the population in our area. I want to wish everybody a Shabbat Shalom and hope we have good weather and enjoy. Remember, social distancing and masks in public. When you're near people, please stay safe and please stay well. Shabbat Shalom.